The following transmission is between myself and you, the audience. I've been actively doing YouTube as a passion project for the last 4 years, and every day has been a new adventure, and every upload has brought something new. And while there have been bad times for sure, the experience is something that I continue to treasure, and I see it as an opportunity to create, to explore, to socialize, and to grow. Today, the 5th of May, is especially important for 2 reasons. The first of which being the anniversary of when I first began my journey as a YouTuber, and the second being the 13th episode of the Atomcast, as well as the unveiling of the Atomcast's official YouTube channel, where you are most likely watching this video. If not, check the links in the description below to follow and subscribe, and listen to every conversation we've had thus far, and stick around for, hopefully, many, many more to come. Over the course of our conversation, we'll talk about my experiences as a content creator, the future of both the Follower Toshi and the Atomcast, and I'll answer fan-submitted questions regarding all of the above. This is the Atomcast, a conversation with interesting people from across the internet. And the best way you can show your support is by subscribing to our Patreon, as your monthly contribution will go towards improving the quality of transmission, as well as helping to decrease the time between uploads. As always, links to our Patreon, as well as all related socials, can be found in the description below. I thank you all for your continued support. And now, without further ado, let us begin. So I've been sitting here for the past couple of minutes just trying to figure out what I want to say and how I want to say it, because for anybody who's watched me do live streams, I'm not real good at the sort of improvisational conversation. I usually fumble over my words a lot, forget what I'm saying, the point I'm trying to make. Actually, I'll walk back on that. I very rarely forget the point that I'm trying to make, but it's the in-between that always trips me up. It's a lot easier if I have a script in front of me, if I've, taken the time, often way more time than I probably should have spent, writing out my thoughts and just getting everything in order. Or when it's during live streaming, just getting, bouncing my ideas off of chat and responding to what they're saying. I feel like often when I'm doing streams, I'm taking a lot of cues from what's going on in the chat. That might be a fault of mine as a sort of not really the greatest streamer, not the most experienced in a way. But all that's to say, I've been spending a little bit of time thinking about what I want to talk about and how I want to talk about it. There are some fan questions that I threw my net out. It's like, hey, who's got questions? Anybody got questions? I'll answer questions for this episode of the Atomcast. But beyond that, I think the biggest things I want to talk about is, first, because we're here on the Atomcast, the Atomcast YouTube channel. Or, if you're watching this on the Atomcast YouTube channel or on the Follower Toshi channel, the point is still the same. The first thing I want to talk about is the Atomcast. Then I want to talk about my content as Follower Toshi and sort of like where I kind of want both to go, or my thoughts, my speculations on where I would like them to go. So the direction I am taking them in and the direction I'm thinking about taking them in. First and foremost, especially since this is an Atomcast episode, let's talk real quickly about the Atomcast. What is it? What's its point? Why are you watching it? Well, hopefully you know why you're watching it, but unless you've been, shanghaied by ravened Follower Toshi fans who just so happen to be pirates, let me explain. Because especially in previous episodes, I've never really explained what the Atomcast is intended to be. I've talked about it in a couple of live streams, sort of hinted at it every once in a while with the Atom, or in like previous interviews. But basically, I had the idea of a podcast because I never really thought about doing podcasting specifically. Funnily enough, it was something that I was probably very naturally attuned to, having done a lot of interviewing in college for, classes and stuff, filmography stuff. We learned about documentaries, doing interviews, things of that nature. So I had all the skill sets for it, but I never really saw it as something that I had an idea for, like what I wanted it to do. Because most podcasts are either a team thing. It's like a group of people, or two people, or one person who's either like going over like weekly news, like it's a weekly podcast thing, or like a guest interview kind of thing. Myself, I don't listen to too many podcasts. They're usually 9 times out of 10, they're too long form for what I have available in my day. Obviously, I'll dive in and do research, such as with the Chad 76 podcast, the Robots Radio Network podcasts, the Fallout one. I haven't checked out the Starfield one, which I really want to, because especially now, since the last big Starfield update, there's a lot more attention on Starfield right now, which as of the time of this recording was like yesterday. But the point is, I don't really do a lot of podcasting because I just don't have the time. Two of the biggest ones that I do listen to are Forward by Andrew Yang, which is a whole nother thing. I was a fan of him, still kind of am. And the people that he brings on are really interesting. They talk about a lot of ideas. And the other podcast I listen to is the Lex Friedman podcast, which some eagle-eyed viewers would probably notice some similarities between the way I do my podcast on the Atomcast and the Lex Friedman podcast. His work was a big inspiration, and actually the idea for the Atomcast came from me just listening to him, because what Lex Friedman does is he just brings on interesting and unique people, and most of them very important people, and important as in like notoriety. He's brought on Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu. Destiny's been on before, the streamer. I believe he's had Ben Shapiro on. Political. I forget what state she represents, but Congressman Tulsi Gabbard's been on there. Andrew, I think, and if I remember correctly, his last name's Callahan. Andrew Callahan from Channel 5 News on YouTube, formerly All Gas No Breaks. And just like loads and loads of other people. Elon Musk has been on there a couple of times. Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. There was someone else I can't remember, but a lot of people who have, either I don't want to say like interesting or controversial ideas, just like people with a lot to say and a lot to talk about. And I kind of thought that it would be fun to make a podcast where I do basically the same thing, but for people in the Fallout community. So, I've talked with Phobos, a former dev from the Frontier. I've talked with Kenneth Vigu. Sorry, I always mess up his last name. I've talked with Kenneth Vigu, Ken from the Fallout 76 or Chad 76 podcast, and just, like, all kinds of people. I talked with Ropaket and Hippie Holocaust of the Fallout Coos Bay project. Ropey himself actually being a current dev at Bethesda who actually helped to work on Starfield. I talked with so many cool and interesting people. I got to talk with Sim Settlements 2 developer King Gath. I talked with Eleonora. I talked with Lolita Lemon. Just like all of these really cool and interesting people that, at the very least, I think they're cool and interesting. Obviously, they have their own fan base, but I wanted to make the Atomcast something of like a compendium of like the most interesting people in the Fallout community. And as I've been doing it for like the last year, it's been really fun. I would personally like to do it a little bit more often. As it is right now, the Atomcast is a monthly upload. And the problem with that is the amount of people that I have on like backlog right now, to either contact to get on the Atomcast, or who I have already talked to and they've expressed an interest in doing a podcast interview, or who I have already done an interview with and are just waiting to release a video on. It's big. The backlog itself is huge, and right now I got 2 people on the hook. I got an episode that's going to be dropping next month, which for what we for some of the stuff that we talked about in that episode is like way outdated by now. But yeah, it's just that like part of me is worried that we're going to kind of like run out of people to talk to, because even though the Fallout community is real big and there's a lot of people in it, there's only like so many people, and as of like right now, it's just a monthly thing. I'd like to at some point make it a bi-monthly thing, but maybe after it grows a little bit more, gets a little bit bigger. Besides that, one of the big things that I wanted to do with the Atomcast specifically is branch out into other communities, specifically as it relates to Bethesda, Skyrim, and now Starfield, since that's the newest thing. They sort of teased in the Starfield like May update that they were going to be they're doing a beta release of the modding kit for Starfield, if I remember correctly, to like specific modders, and then it's going to be rolled out fully later in the year. So there's going to be a big influx there, so there's going to be new people to talk to in the Starfield community, and I personally think I think it's going to be awesome, and I hope I hope all you guys will as well. But so like that's as far as the Atomcast goes, that's where I'm kind of like thinking about like, well, obviously at some point it is going to have to expand beyond just Fallout, but beyond that, I was thinking like, hey, I could always like once we get big enough, talk with, just other people in the internet community in general, which I think would be kind of interesting. There's a lot of people who don't really fit into either like, the Fallout sphere or the Bethesda sphere internally, like specifically, like that's their whole beat. But they are still like either noteworthy people on the internet or just interesting people on the internet, because there's a lot of interesting people, both for better and worse. I've thought a couple of times about bringing some of the more controversial figures onto the Atomcast to speak with them, because even if it's somebody who might be controversial, I think that it's interesting to talk to them just to like, one, get their perspective, and two, try to understand just like I guess to understand their perspective kind of sum that out, but just like get in their head, because like for good or ill, there are people in either our community as Fallout fans, as Bethesda fans, or just as like denizens of the internet, like it or not, everybody on the internet is kind of associated with each other in a weird continuing like existential kind of way, like by proxy in a lot of ways. So that's kind of where I want to take the Atomcast. One of the things that I've been kicking around in my head more so recently has been sort of like smaller mini episodes talking about other things, more so partially related to gaming and internet culture, that aren't like out and out interviews, like shorter episodes that I can put out also once a month, but don't take as much time away from other big projects that I'm working on, because that's mostly been one of the big things as far as what's been holding me back from doing more Atomcast episodes more often. It's just that even though these the episodes themselves are stupid easy to edit together, there's a lot of coordination. You gotta get in touch with people. You gotta find a day that works for you. Often when you're doing it with people who live overseas, like me, I live in Portland, Oregon, and I've done, at this point, well, besides the one that I'm going to do in a couple days, I will have done 3 interviews with people who live in Europe. So the time difference is always like, it'll be like, like 7 a.m. here, and it'll be like 6 o'clock there, or like I've definitely not 100% accurate on that. But it's difficult a lot of the times, and they're Fallout and Bethesda do have a lot of fans in America and a lot of fans in Europe, but there's also fans in like Japan and China and other parts of the world, and like especially Australia. There's somebody in my my Discord server, Carvac, who's made a bunch of really good Sim Settlements 2 settlement mods, and he lives in Australia. And so like if I were to interview him or anybody else from Australia, like say Lone Vault Wanderer, for example, it'd be just another thing we have to coordinate and figure out, like, okay, I have this day at this time free, when's that work out for you? It's like just the preparation for that stuff takes up a lot more time than the editing itself. But one of the, with the smaller ideas, one of the ideas that I've had is talking more about, because this could very well just be like a momentary reactionary thing from me specifically, but so often when people are talking about like I'll go online and I'll see like a video or something, like I can't remember what it was or who specifically created it, but I saw a video and it was talking about the Fallout Amazon Prime show, so Fallout Prime as I refer to it, and they were talking about like, oh, like it's awful, they ruined it, the what was it, like they changed all this stuff, like I can't remember much of it at this point, but one of the things that really stood out to me as being very strange was they said they made the claim that the Brotherhood of Steel is now misogynistic, which I didn't get really where that was coming from, but I wasn't at all interested in figuring out where it came from. But one of the things that I saw was when I looked at this person's channel, I think it was like in their channel description or something, like their bio description or whatever, they talked about like, talking about like internet and gaming culture or whatever, and like that specifically, like internet and gaming culture is something that I see like every once in a while. Maybe it's just a me thing, maybe I just haven't seen as much of the other side, but so often I see like channels or like podcasts that are like, we talk about internet gaming culture. And it like one of the videos it'll boil down to 2 things. It'll boil down to either anti-woke, or when you like really dig into the nitty-gritty, people who are still just like fucking pissed off about the last Star Wars trilogy. That video in question that I mentioned, I actually had somebody send that to me, and I was like, okay, this channel is either going to be anti-woke, or it's going to just be bitching and whining about Star Wars. And I started the video that was about Fallout Prime, and the first thing that they said was they made a reference to like the Kylo Ren thing, like forget the past, kill it if you must. And then when I went on their channel like 3 videos back, it was something about like, like what was it, like Activision's gone woke or something like that. I don't know. But like, it's so weird because I only ever see that like gaming and internet culture from that perspective. I only see it as like this weird culture war thing, or like, I don't know. I try not to use verbiage like this, but like a lot more like negative side of the conversation. They it's always like, oh, we don't want like wokeism or DEI or, you know, like this, that, and the other thing. It's so weird to me that it's only just like that part of the conversation, and it doesn't seem to be a reflective side, like talking about how games could be more inclusive but not, you know, overbearing, how games could explore different you know, different cultures and different settings without seeming, you know, again, overbearing. One of the things that was going on with that whole Sweet Baby Inc. Thing, which for anybody who doesn't know, there's a company called Sweet Baby Inc. And basically what their job is they go out and they help big studios with it is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's basically just like making sure that like, oh, you know, you're representing like this group accurately or this group accurately, this, that, and the other thing. But one of the things that kind of like fell on the Sweet Baby Inc. shit list because some fucking, what was it? I don't even remember at this point. It's so fucking long ago. But the point is there was a whole bunch of people who were mad at Sweet Baby Inc. because they saw them as like, oh, these are the people that are ruining video games because they're inserting DEI into, you know, fucking our video games or whatever. And one of the games that I saw that was like on the like list of games that the studio had worked on was this game called, I think it was Song of the South, if I remember correctly, which has this very like Louisiana, like deep swamp vibes, like New Orleans in like fucking Gator country and shit. And it was just like overflowing with so much like creativity and soul. And I remember seeing the trailer at E3. I can't remember, or maybe it wasn't E3. Maybe it was like an Xbox thing. But I remember seeing the trailer when it first came out, and I just thought like this game, this is just like dripping with potential. As far as like good writing and setting and stuff. Is it? I don't know. Could it be bad? Absolutely. Anything could be bad. But I just feel that there's so much like counter conversation pushing back against things and not really talking about like, oh, we don't want this to happen, so let's do this, or like we want this to happen, so let's do this. It all seems a lot more destructive instead of constructive. So one of the ideas I had with the Atomcast is maybe doing smaller episodes like that, talking about you know, different games or, you know, movies or stories or experiences, because there's like ARGs and stuff that are more so along that lines where, you know, the main character's you know, androgynous or bisexual or, you know, black or Asian, or like the story is set in I forget the name of the game, but there was a game that was being talked about on NPR the other day, and it kind of sounded a little bit like it was a Dark Souls style game, but it was based on Kenyan mythology, if I remember correctly. And I know I saw a trailer for it at some point. But it sounded really, really cool, and the music sounded really cool. And I'm just like thinking in my head, like, man, that in my head anyway, that sounds like a fun game. That sounds like it might be kind of interesting. But like, I don't know. It always just seems like the internet culture stuff always just seems like it's a negative side. They're all like, again, I don't like using this kind of verbiage, but like they're all just like complaining that stuff isn't like this way or that way or whatever. So, you know, I've been kicking around that as an idea. But whether or not that'll become a thing, I don't know. Me personally, it feels partially reactionary on my point, and I don't know if it's something that I could make into like a bigger, more consistent thing. It would probably have to be a combination of like, is it something that I feel like I could continuously talk about in some sort of unique and interesting way, and is it something that people would find interest in? There's all kinds of learning and education and higher quote unquote academic content on the internet. And it's like, would I have some sort of unique angle to come at this from to make it something that people would enjoy? And at this point, I don't know. Maybe not. If you guys have a any opinions on that specifically, maybe not making the Atomcast more of like an internet and gaming culture kind of thing, but more so every once in a while making like a mini episode talking about that. Do let me know. But that's basically where I'm at with the Atomcast. It's a, I guess technically this would be a long form, interview style, podcast, talking to, at the moment anyway, Fallout's most interesting people, and, hopefully, at a later date, Skyrim, Starfield, maybe branching out beyond, just the Bethesda sphere. But besides that, maybe we'll talk about, again, quote unquote, internet culture and gaming, in a more constructive way. Like, this is the end goal we want. How do we create it? And, maybe highlighting, just unique games that explore different sorts of, quote unquote, representation, kind of things. But yeah. As far as my content specifically as Follower Toshi, I've talked about this a lot before in streams and in posts and stuff like that, but I haven't really had the opportunity to talk about it in more so of a, I guess, quote unquote, official capacity in a video. And basically, when I started my channel originally, not originally, because I think I originally made the channel in like 2009 or something, but when I originally started uploading content, it was more so gameplay focused stuff. And over the years, it's kind of shifted around a little bit. I was making gameplay content, and then that turned into doing a review video of that playthrough. So like one of the first big things was Fallout New California, which was really awesome. I still really enjoy that mod. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but for like the first big mod project, it was pretty good. I liked it. And that was like my first review video. And then, another one followed, and then there was another one. I know I did Forville. I know I did, what was the other one? The Commonwealth Responders. And one or two other ones that I can't remember off the top of my head. We did Sim Settlements, obviously. The Sim Settlements review videos are actually a big part of what's keeping my channel afloat right now, while I take fucking a million years to finish my current big projects that I'm working on. But so like it sort of shifted more so into that, like reviews for mods in 2022, if I'm remembering correctly. For Bethesda's Fallout's 25th anniversary, I did a series of mod review videos that weren't attached to a playthrough, that had more of a like spooky theme because it was in October and everything. I had a lot of fun making those because a lot of them, not a lot of them, but a decent amount of them didn't have a story. I think only like 2 of them didn't have a story attached to them. And so I was able to be a little bit more creative and kind of make a story out of them. And, I did a couple different things with, one video, a couple different things with another video, and it was just more of a creative outlet kind of process. And it was both, I guess it was kind of technically after that, after the anniversary, I sort of shifted into this sort of news thing, like, talking head, like man at the desk kind of thing. We talked about, let's see, what all did we talk about in the lead up? We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about why I don't do lore projects. We talked like lore videos, which I guess wasn't 100% true because I had kind of done stuff like that. But I always kind of approach lore in like, if I can't do something that I think is unique and interesting with it, I don't really want to do it because I feel like it's just been done over and over and over at this point. And you know, even though it would probably get a lot of views, especially now in a post Fallout Prime world, it again, it just seems like something that's been done so many times that it's like I'm not adding anything new to the conversation really. But after that, or well, no, like fuck, what else was there? There was that one video where we were talking about the TikToker Molly Moon and the unique form of horror she created and the game that she was making, which I actually found out like a couple weeks ago that not only had that game actually come out and I missed it, but now it was no longer like being worked on because I guess Molly Moon had pulled out of the project or whatever, which was a real bummer because from what I saw, it looked super interesting. But yeah, we just did a bunch of news videos like that. Some of them were really good. Like, you know, we did a video talking about Velma. The Molly Moon one did really well. The Velma one did really well. And it was interesting because that was one of the few times that I've talked about something that wasn't video game related or like internet content related. That specifically was talking about a TV show, which, spoilers, the second season came out. It's just as fucking awful. Not as awful, but it's still fucking bad. And you know, I just did a whole bunch of videos like that. Some of the ones that didn't do so good was like my review of the Mario Party or the Super Mario Brothers movie. That one didn't do so well, which is like, you know, hit and miss. But as of like right now, especially since like the last big video that I put out that wasn't an Atomcast episode, was talking about, you know, in Fallout 76, Nuclear Winter, which was Fallout 76's Battle Royale thing, which would be so fucking awesome if it came back, because that low-key, high-key Fallout 76 Nuclear Winter was awesome. But like that was the first big thing that was the last big thing that I put out. And a big reason for that is because, one, I got an idea for another video that I wanted to get out by Halloween. That ended up taking way longer than I thought. We missed that. And then there was an announcement that Fallout the Frontier had been like revitalized, like it was coming back. They were TG Spy had come back. He was gonna, you know, get back in there and tune it all up, do a whole bunch of changes, and like do a big re-release. So that kind of shifted to like, okay, I need to make a video talking about like fully properly talking about the Frontier. And then in the process, that video or that script anyway is done. I just need to actually get working on that. But in that interim there, April happened, Fallout Prime happened, so I had to get a video out to talk about that, which that is also super close to being done. The script's pretty much finished. I just gotta get in, collect the necessary footage, edit, and then boom. Hopefully it's gonna be out by this episode is up on Cinco de Mayo, so it will hopefully be out sometime this week, if not early next week. That's my goal anyway. But I have another video already finished, done, ready to upload. I just have to release it. That will come out after the Frontier video. After the Fallout Prime video, before the Frontier video. And then I just have a whole bunch of other projects in mind. But the reason that it shifted from the news content to basically like nothing right now is because last year I didn't have a job for pretty much all of last year, almost all of last year. And when the Nuclear Winter video came out, I had gotten back into the workforce, so I had a lot less time to work on projects. So the reason content hasn't been coming out from the Follower Toshi channel as often as it was prior is just because I just don't have any fucking time to work on it anymore because I'm working all the time. But I am still working on stuff behind the scenes. It's just changed from sort of a like a weekly thing like I was doing before, or like an every kind of day thing like I was doing way before when I was doing playthroughs. It's changed from that to more of a project-based thing, an essay-based thing, I guess you could say. I'm doing, as as I just talked about, I'm doing videos talking about Fallout Prime. I'm doing videos talking about the Frontier. I'm going to be doing all kinds of other. I got a whole bunch of Fallout content I want to dig into, but I also want to sort of like change it up a little bit. I want to do videos talking about, like, you know, Alan Wake 2, Pacific Drive. Fuck, what's that other one? Citizen Sleeper. There's so many awesome games out there that I want to talk about, because I feel like I kind of see something that maybe not other people don't, but there's something in a lot of games that I see, and I feel like it would make for either an interesting story or at the very least an interesting video. And I, you know, as a Fallout content creator, I don't know how you guys, the audience is going to react to those videos. I hope you like them. Based on some of the content that I put out so far that isn't Fallout based, I think you will. I just need the time to actually create something that I think is up to up to my audience's high standards, sky high standards, as it were. But so that's mostly what I'm doing with my content right now on the Follower Toshi channel, is that sort of essay form video essay, video, you know, whatever you want to call it, video essay is I think the most succinct thing. But yeah, that's more so where my content is right now. And for the Follower Toshi channel, that's probably where it's going to be. I have sort of kicked around the idea of, I guess at this point, a third channel that's like specifically gameplay related stuff, doing more like gameplay videos like we've done before, like with Tonic, or the new seasons videos. You know, I just kind of fucking, that video we did with Tonic, like that, I just kind of name dropped that. I think it was the Nuka World update. Me and him got in and we were playing together, and I made a video out of it. And like there's a bunch of like gameplay stuff we could do. So like that's another thing I'm kicking around. Again, you know, post in the comments if you'd want to see stuff like that, the gameplay stuff. I always really enjoyed doing the gameplay stuff because it allowed me to do, like, editing wise, it allowed me to do some more you know, goofy editing stuff, some more like meme-ish sort of clips and edits. The essay stuff doesn't really as much allow for that. It's more so of like a creative writing kind of project. But you know, it could be fun. I just don't really know how I'd be able to fit all that in with the stuff I'm doing now, but we're very project focused right now. So maybe I'll be able to figure it out a little later. But yeah, as far as what the future of Follower Toshi content looks like, that is more or less the direction that it's currently in, and it's currently going in. It's going to be essay specific stuff. Hopefully I'm going to it's mostly just like these two big projects, the Frontier and the Fallout Prime video. Those are just like real big, and they're just taking up a lot of time. And they're going to be pretty beefy videos. And the other stuff that I want to do most likely won't be as big and as beefy. But I'm still hoping to be able to create content and put it out there that is of a higher quality than some of the stuff that I've put out previously. Because even though I, you know, feel pretty proud and pretty confident of a lot of my past content, I want to create something that has a little bit more, what's the word? What's a proper word for it? Like a little bit more, just something that is more, how do we say it? Something that's more, you know, more thinky kind of videos. Yeah. But yeah, that's and as far as the Atomcast goes, it's still going to be a monthly thing, talking to interesting people in the Fallout community, hopefully expanding that later to the Skyrim and the Starfield community, and then who knows, maybe further out into just the internet in general. And yeah, maybe we'll be able to get enough going to make it a bi-monthly thing. I'd really like that. And maybe we'll do like little mini episodes talking about, constructive conversations around internet and gaming culture, quote unquote. But yeah, that's the direction I'm taking, sort of, I guess, both of these channels, Follower Toshi and the Atomcast, in as of right now. Whether that'll change, in the near to distant future, near future, I hope not, because then I kind of gotta rethink everything. In the distant future, I kind of maybe hope so a little bit, because I don't really like doing the same thing for like a very long time. I feel like things start to get a little kind of samey, kind of dull, kind of boring. I like to try to shake things up as much as I can, where I'm able to, in a cohesive sense. Yeah, and that's the direction I'm, taking the channel in. I hope that it is something that you guys who are fans of the Follower Toshi channel will continue to be a part of. And as new fans of the Atomcast, I hope that one, if you're a brand new fan, welcome. I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. Trust me, there's way more interesting conversations with other in other videos. And if you're a longtime fan, thanks for being a fan of whatever the hell it is I'm doing with this goofy little podcast idea. As I mentioned before, I put out a Q&A a while ago. So I can get questions from my fans, because I know that there's a lot of people that show up to my streams that are either there to enjoy or like want to ask questions and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of people who aren't able to make those streams, or don't like the whole streaming vibe, like they don't enjoy watching streams, which I get it. I don't really watch streams either. But I threw that out there just to who's got questions for me that they want to ask and have me answer with my brain. So that's what I got in front of me here. I got a whole bunch of questions, and I gave people the option of either just posting publicly, or if they want to stay anonymous, just like messaging me, which, as far as I've seen, there was definitely a decent amount of anonymous questions, but it seemed like most people are fine with just name and face, quote unquote. But let's see, where do we want to start? Let's start with the YouTube questions, because there's some pretty good YouTube questions here. This one is from Official The Real Banana. Very clever name. What came first, your Vault Boy profile, picture character, or your in-game player? So all of these questions, especially since I wrote them out onto a document sheet, I've read before, but it's been a couple of weeks at this point, actually, since I last not looked at them, but since I got them and wrote them down and everything. So they're questions that I've either been made aware of or have just been like mulling, I guess more specifically, and have kind of been mulling around in my brain, but I didn't want to think about them too much, because I didn't want to overthink them, or like I wanted them to be like still new questions. So for this first question, what came first, your Vault Boy profile, your picture character, or your in-game player? So out of those three, the in-game player came first, and then I guess technically the picture character, and then the Vault Boy profile, because the Vault Boy profile was something that I had an artist on Discord commission for me, and that was based on, I suppose, my picture character. I get maybe I'm not 100% understanding what you mean by picture character, but as far as like Vault Boy profile was like the newest one, and it was based on my in-game profile or my in-game player character. But for like the deep lore of Follower Toshi, my in-game player character of Toshi, green hair, all that, originally came from many years ago, closer to when was it? It was definitely let's see, it was in 2019, and then probably 2015, 2016, something along those lines. At that point, I had been pretty active in a a text-based role-playing community that role-played like a fan fiction version of the of the Bleach anime, or I guess technically manga. Sorry. But like, you know, it wasn't like, you know, oh, this guy's playing this character and this guy's playing this. No, we sort of like made our own characters and stuff like that. And so I had my own character who his name was Toshi. I forget what his last name was. This is years ago. Something with an O. I can't remember. Anyway, and so that was my character, and he was in Squad 11, Division 11, or sorry, 12, which was sort of like the sciencey one. And so like that was where the character originally started from, or like originally came from, the original idea for it. And then once I got more into modding Fallout 4 specifically, because I prior to that in like Fallout 3 and New Vegas, I had sort of like a generalist idea of like, oh, this is what my character looks like. And then going into Fallout 4, it was still kind of the same thing, but because at that point I had been doing this Bleach RP for so long with the character Toshi, who had green hair because green's my favorite color. I just sort of like transferred him over from one quote unquote universe to the other, and just like, oh, what would he look like in Fallout? And I made him for Fallout 4. There were some mods that I had installed for, I can't remember what they were for, but like one of them was a like a whole bunch of like different hairstyles, and there was one where he had a much more like mop hairstyle. Like it was like medium length, and it was kind of just like everywhere. And then when I can't remember if it was Fallout 76 or Fallout 4 where I first changed him to the shorter on the sides, kind of like short medium length on top hair. Again, I can't remember if that was Fallout 4 or Fallout 76, but that's how the character developed and turned into what he is now today. Toshi's always been a very chaotically positive character. He's a force of good, but like he'll do it he does it the way he wants. And that's how I usually try to be in like my real life, and on the internet, just like everywhere in general. Okay, let's see. What's the next one? 36 degrees /VX6WZ. That's a fucking burner account if I've ever heard one. It's probably not. I apologize for the playful jab there. I would like to hear your opinion on. Oh, sorry. I would like to hear your opinion of both the. I would like to hear your opinion of both the Fallout 2 and Fallout 3 Enclave in terms of writing, design, and aesthetics, such as uniform and locations. I'm not 110% sure what you're asking there. To be perfectly honest, it doesn't sound like you're asking a question at all. Because you say, I would like to hear your opinion on both Fallout 2, Fallout 3 Enclave in terms of writing, design, and aesthetics, such as uniform and location. I I don't really have any strong opinions on their uniform location. I'm not 100% sure what you mean. I think maybe like um the, like Raven Rock or sorry, brain, the oil rig. I guess locations, like me personally, it makes more sense for the Enclave to be in DC than California. I guess technically they're off the shore of California, but it's, I don't know, it's to like sort of a bigger point in like terms of writing and design. I think the biggest thing is the writing of like the Enclave as a faction. The whole point of the Enclave is, from a narrative perspective, they're the representation of the, I guess, technically the worst parts of American patriotism. They're hyper zealous, hyper aggressive. I halt just short of saying racist, because like even though they like don't like mutants, super mutants, ghouls, I guess technically anybody who has even a little bit of radiation, it's slightly different than racism, I feel. But they are very like purist, like eugenics. Like they almost feel like they're like, the quote unquote Nazi faction in the game's writing and story and such. They're not. They're basically just like, oh, like this is what America would look like as sort of like a totalitarian, not quite dictatorship, but more so like it's shining a light on how like ultra violent the concept of hyper nationalistic, not specifically American, but like hyper nationalistic patriotism can be. There's obviously been, many forms of hyper nationalistic, Japan, England, Germany, this, that, and the other thing. Definitely American, in like many other sources of media. But the Enclave specifically has always felt different because it's so deeply rooted and so very close to sort of what the hyper nationalist concept of American patriotism is now. And me personally, I've seen a decent number of people who have sort of taken on the Enclave as not their like whole identity, but like the kind of like, oh, this is my favorite faction, for various different reasons. Obviously, it's fun to be the bad guys every once in a while, but I've seen some people who sort of talk in terms of like, oh, there needs to be like an Enclave redemption arc, or there needs to be like a splinter faction, or it's like, oh, yeah, we're breaking away, like we're the good guys now. But I actually talked about this in a stream not too long ago. Me personally, I don't really think that the Enclave needs or deserves a redemption arc, because it's pretty antithetical to the point of the faction in general. It would kind of be like Caesar's Legion having a redemption arc. Like could it be done in a semi-realistic or understandable kind of way? Yeah, absolutely. But it defeats the whole point of what the faction is supposed to represent in and of itself. Caesar's Legion is supposed to represent that sort of like commentary on what is it? I can't remember the specific word, but it because like Ulysses talked about it a lot in his whole monologue. It's basically Caesar Legion is like the representation of what happens when you make symbols out of men. Like the whole underlying structure of Caesar's Legion, like it doesn't function without Caesar. And to that point, it's saying something about how we sort of build people up, right? How we turn them into symbols, and how we depend so much on them as like the end all be all, that it kind of like it, like again, like it's the whole point of like them as a faction. The Legion soldiers lose their identity. The Legion removes the identity from the tribes that they absorb and just makes it like they become a monolith. And the Enclave is a very similar sort of thing. Their whole point is the extremism of a group that views you as the other. They are the quote unquote definitive oppressive faction. They are the oppressors. They're the fucking boot on the back of the little guy. They're the big bad force that's flying in on vertibirds and stuff and is going to wipe out your town. And so to turn that, like, I don't want to say like they're the ultimate bad guy, but they're serving a point in the narrative, and that point is sort of a reflection of what happens when, admittedly, a tiny kernel of a good idea becomes something much bigger and much more toxic. And to remove that, to have the Enclave, quote unquote, become better, I see as sort of devaluing what the Enclave is and what it's supposed to represent. I think that same with Caesar's Legion. There can be good and interesting stories told with that idea, told from their perspective, but I don't think there should be a story where they become the good guys, or at least the faction itself. Because we saw something like that happen in Fallout New Vegas with the Enclave remnants, where they used to be the quote unquote bad guys, but then they turned into quote unquote good guys. But that was the individual people. We can have individual people story arcs where they're bad and become good, but to do that for the faction, again, it devalues what the point of the group is. I don't know if that answers what you were trying to get at there. But it's like I think that the Enclave is a well-written and well-presented group. Me personally, I wouldn't really like to see them in future games or future content going forward, unless it's like a pre-war thing. But I mean, that's just me. But I do think that they kind of need to continue to be what they are because they're serving a purpose, and there's not really any other faction outside of like maybe Vault-Tec, with the way Bethesda's kind of moving things around a little bit, that can serve a like purpose, in my opinion anyway. All right. Fun Run 07 Han 50. That's all one name. Your question is, if you could choose any location to be a Fallout game, you can choose a state and it can... Let me start from the top there. If you could choose any location to be a Fallout game, you can choose a state and it also can include another state. What would it be? So this is a big question. It's kind of broken down into two things. Where, I guess more so like, what region of the United States would you like a future Fallout game to be set? And obviously, like, I sort of have a couple different answers to this depending on multiple different factors. One, I'd like to see the Pacific Northwest, specifically Portland, made into an actual proper Fallout game. I feel that the Frontier, at least visually, like the map, more or less did it justice, except for that weird giant ice location up in the Northeast. That was kind of weird. But like everywhere else was like pretty well done. There would have been a couple of different things that I probably would have been like, hey, you should have done this way. You should have done that way. Because in the Fallout timeline, the divergence is 1956, if I remember correctly. So there's a lot of Portland landmarks that aren't there that make sense for them not to be there because of the divergent split. But then I believe they included ground control, which I don't remember when that was when that was built, but it definitely wasn't 1956 or prior to that. So that was a little weird for it being out there. Obviously, the Frontier has a bunch of other issues. But as far as like just the map itself, I think they did a pretty good job. But if we're talking like an official game, I think it would be really cool to see what Bethesda can make with Portland, Oregon. Other than that, just the Pacific Northwest in general, I think would be really cool. I think that obviously like the easy one would be a game set in like New Orleans, and like, you know, the surrounding area. There's a bunch of different mod projects that are being made. Fallout Cascadia, which takes place in Washington. Fallout Miami, which takes place in Miami. But there's all kinds of other parts of the United States that could either make for an interesting topographical setting, or could just, you know, explore a unique story or heritage, or, you know, cultural, you know, just cultural regency. I think that a Fallout set in Montana could probably be pretty interesting, especially if they incorporated more of the Native American tribes and heritage and cultures and stuff like that. But if I had to pick, like, probably the big, like, out of anything else, like, I only get one shot at picking a game set in the Fallout universe in the United States. You know, we're talking outside the United States, it's not going to happen. I don't like, you know, thinking along those lines, because one, is not going to happen. Two, I don't know. There's an argument to be made that Fallout isn't really Fallout if it's outside the United States. You know, Fallout London could absolutely prove me wrong. But we'll see. But as far as like inside the United States, I think that probably one of the more interesting locations to explore, and I've talked about this in as like a setting anyway. One of the more interesting locations to explore, I think, would be Dogtown, which is, oh gosh, no, it's not Pittsburgh. Detroit, I think. I could be 100% off on that, but I'm pretty sure in Fallout, the city of Detroit becomes a city known as Dogtown, because the town is just like, you know, stupid with dog. Like, there's wild dogs like everywhere. And I think it would be really interesting, because it could be one of, or actually probably the first and only Fallout game to exclusively take place on like, you know, above ground. So, you know, let's say the city is, you know, it's like a big city. Detroit's a big city. Let's say that there's just dogs everywhere. And if you, like, you know, fall down, you know, like dogs just swarm you, right? And you got to like get back up as fast as you can before you get fucking overtaken by dogs. But it just creates this underlying layer, like at the bottom, like this is where all the bad stuff is, on like on the ground floor. And so all of the setting is taking place on, you know, high rises and on the top of buildings and rooftops and, you know, highway overpasses and stuff. One of the really cool things about Fallout 4 specifically is the way that they built the map, because there was such a larger aspect of verticality about the game. There were so many more locations that had multiple stories, and you could scale those stories on the exterior. You know, and there's the big highways that are going, you know, this way and that way. There's multiple different buildings you can climb. There's I can't remember the name of the building, but like there's an interior section that actually has like a little platforming thing you can get up to if you have like a power armor jetpack, and you can get these leg guards that, like, you put them both on, you don't take fall damage. It's like so many interesting things that can be done with verticality. And I think that a Fallout set in Detroit, Dogtown, where it's all taking place on that like upper level rooftops, high rises, highways, you know, elevated roads, stuff like that, I think that'd be really interesting. Besides that, as like, I guess kind of like a new location that doesn't really have as much lore, I think it would be really cool to visit the Grand Canyon, because I've been there in real life, and like people who haven't been to the Grand Canyon are like, oh, it's just a big hole in the ground, how interesting could it be? Like, no, it's a big hole in the ground. It's huge. Like if there was ever an end of the world, it would be the Grand Canyon. And because it's so big, there's like an entirely different culture of people that could have developed on the floor of the canyon. And from a lot of the lore that we've been introduced to so far, there kind of is. It would start to bring in more elements of Caesar's Legion, since they have, they control Arizona. But maybe in a post Fallout New Vegas timeline, maybe they're not as big of a presence there for either, for very variable different reasons. Maybe they got wiped out at Hoover Dam. Maybe their attention just can't be as, on the Grand Canyon right now. So like we see like, bits and pieces of Legion, references, flags, a legionary or two. But we never really like see them as like a big force in the area. Maybe it's like a small outfit, like a local government or something, but nothing like a massive faction. But if I had to pick a location for a new Fallout game to be, it would probably be one of those things. It would probably be either, again, besides the obvious of New Orleans, it would probably either be Dogtown or or the Grand Canyon, especially if it encompassed the entire Grand Canyon and like a little bit of the area around it. Can you imagine? That'd be insane. Now I'm just thinking about that, like, damn, that'd be cool as hell. It would actually probably serve both the goals that I'm looking at or looking to reach there. Because the big thing with Dogtown, I think, would be just the verticality of it. And because the Grand Canyon's so deep, there could be like, canyon cities that are kind of built like that, with like very high up, architecture and buildings and scaffolding and houses and stuff. And I think that'd be pretty cool. I think more so, the Grand Canyon would be more so from a cultural perspective, exploring like the different cultures that developed in the Grand Canyon. Whereas with Dogtown, it would be more of a setting kind of thing, just experiencing everything from a specifically elevated position. I think that'd be pretty cool. Okay, so I'm not sure how to pronounce the name properly on this one, so I'm just going to say Capro. His question is, do you think you are underrated? So this, I mentioned before that I've been kind of mulling over some of these questions in my mind. This was definitely one of them. I don't really think that I'm underrated because I don't really feel like I've properly hit my stride yet. I feel like I'm still kind of trying to figure out like where my place is in the Fallout community, and more so like what my whole shtick is as a content creator. We talked a little bit about, we talked a lot about where I started as a content creator and where I am now and the direction I'm heading in. And it's a lot of it is just me trying to figure out like what position I want to have as a content creator, the kind of content I want to put out there. I could always just default to the super basic answer of like, oh, of course I'm underrated. Fucking, you should fucking be sharing my content with everybody you know. You should be telling your mom, telling your dad, telling the kid down the street. But like, that's not interesting. Like, if I were to just come out here and be all like, oh yeah, I'm the most underrated Fallout YouTuber there is, like, share and subscribe, watch all my videos 3 times. Like, that's not me. That's pandering. Me personally, I don't chase numbers or clout or attention or anything. I don't really care about that. I'm actually a little scared of it, to be honest. I just want to create things that I think are interesting and have something interesting to say, or that have some sort of like inherent meaning to them. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. I've put out a bunch of videos, that have either been received, negatively or have been received in sort of like a mixed fashion, or they just don't get any views at all. And that's the name of the game. Do I think I'm underrated for my current position? No, not really. If I had like, 1 million subscribers or whatever and was still getting like really low numbers, yeah, probably. But if I was at that point, there'd probably be some sort of like deeper, so there'd definitely be a different problem at that point. But as far as like, do I think I'm underrated? No, I think that a big part of it is I'm still trying to figure out what I'm trying to do, and I'm not really good at advertising myself too. So like, I may be underrated for the position I'm in, but I don't really see it that way anyway. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out like how to catch my stride. Daily John Brown facts. What do you think the biggest misconception about what it's like to make YouTube videos? So I think the biggest misconception, I saw a what was it? There was a little bit of scuffle on I hate saying on Twitter because it makes it sound like everything's always happening on Twitter, but it's just where I saw it. There's another big streamer called Hassan, and he had there was a little bit of a dust up around him because he was clipped saying something that was framed to the effect of, oh gosh, what was it? It was basically like, oh, it's so hard being a streamer. I just have to stream for like, 4 hours a day and make $1 bajillion. Whereas, somebody goes and works a full shift at, fucking like Walmart, or like has to be on the road trucking for 18 hours and just barely make enough to scrape by. But that wasn't quite, surprisingly, with clips, that wasn't quite the entire content. One of the big thing, his whole point, as far as I understood it, was being a content creator, specifically a streamer, because there's a lot more of a direct interaction between you and the chat. It's taxing in the way that it takes a much bigger toll on you mentally, and it's a lot more stressful. So I've had plenty of comments, not surprisingly enough, not so many during live streams, which I think a big part of that is because I'm such a smaller content creator. Like nobody sees me streaming really. But I've had, multiple, bunch of fucking constantly, not constantly, but I've had a lot of comments that have either been dragging me specifically or just, expressing, how do I say it? Not directly hostile, but that have been a lot more like, oh, this content's bad, blah, blah, blah. You're making this about that. One of the, not the biggest, but one of the more noteworthy examples is a lot of the comments that I received and still continue to receive on the video that I released last year in June, just talking about the different characters in Fallout that identified as LGBTQ, and like what their story was, and for some characters, what specifically they were trying to say with those characters. So like, for example, if I remember correctly, Corporal Betty in NCR, or in Fallout New Vegas, the character that was assaulted by Cook the Raider, her character was, like, it's pretty obvious what her what the narrative with her character is, but from where I saw it, a big part of it was, I think she originally was attracted to both men and women, but after her assault, she became more so directly attracted to women, as sort of a negative, what's the term? A negative association with what happened to her. And in New Vegas specifically, there's a lot of characters like that, that have that bigger story or like deeper meaning to them. and I had people all the time, both before that video dropped, or both after, both after the video dropped, and still now, almost a year later, who are all like, oh, like, is this a parody video? You're looking too deeply into that. Like, I think it was on this video specifically, like somebody said like, oh, art doesn't have meaning, or like, there were all these people who were just like dismissing the point I was trying to make. And that, as a content creator, specifically one that's as like me, trying to do much more heady sort of what's the word, like trying to look deeper into the content that's being presented to me. That's it's frustrating, because one of the big points of art is that it is subjective. It can be interpreted in a bunch of different ways, dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions of different ways. But when you're doing content like that, and you have people who are just like intentionally trying to bring you down, or saying like, you're overthinking this, it's not that deep, bro, it gets to you, because it does one of two things. One, if you're a streamer, it just brings all that like negative energy, and it just like kills you emotionally and mentally, and it makes you not want to do the stuff that you're doing. And that sucks, because especially for streamers, it's like, streaming's super fun. A lot of people, myself included, really get a lot of enjoyment out of streaming. And when that enjoyment is tainted by people either being, just unnecessarily obtrusive or directly toxic, it really like weighs on you, like mentally and emotionally. Obviously it's a lot harder to go out and, do a fucking 12-hour construction site job in the middle of, gridlocked New York City at fucking peak hour in like, July, hottest day of the summer, stuff like that. Of course it's more physically demanding, but it's not demanding in the same way that content creation or streaming can be. Because with content creation, when you're making videos and stuff, you're kind of just like putting content together, throwing it out there, and then seeing how people react to it. And when people are reacting like super negative to it, it sucks. It makes you not want to create anymore. It kills your artistic drive. Thankfully, I have not had a massive amount of people reacting to my content like that. I would say the vast majority of it is usually very positive. But that, I think, is the biggest misconception about what it is to be a YouTuber or a streamer. I think that it's the understanding that we're just like not really putting a whole lot of effort into what we do. There's definitely some people who do that. They kind of take their position or their situation for granted. But I think the biggest misconception is that content creators are just sort of like, lazy, self-entitled, arrogant, egotistical. I think that that's a pretty big over exaggeration, applying, the negative parts of like the biggest streamers to, or, the biggest streamers or the biggest content creators to just like everybody. Cause again, there are people who are definitely like that, but it's not, it like, that's not the majority. And when there's a lot of negativity being thrown at people, it definitely has an effect. Like some people will be all like, oh, it's just words, why are you getting so bent out of shape about it? And it's like, well, that's the old saying, words hurt. Like, fucking don't be the biggest the biggest advice that I can give to anybody is try not to hold content creators to such an nth degree that your outlook of them is changed when they do something. That maybe that's not the best way to phrase it, but like, don't put so much stock into content creators. We're just people like all you guys, and we're even the biggest people, the biggest content creators are still just trying to figure it all out. Laura Woods 4199, favorite Fallout 4 mod? This is an easy one, hands down. Hands down, my favorite Fallout 4 mod is Sim Settlements 2. Sim Settlements 2 Chapter 3 to be super specific, but as one big project, Sim Settlements 2 is the characters are super well written. The gameplay is really well done. The story is phenomenal. It's probably not even probably. It is the best story that's been written for a Fallout mod, like period. At least as far as I've seen. I've had other people tell me that like there's other projects that are, you know, super well written. But as far as like being story wise anyway, being better than Fallout or than Sim Settlements 2. Again, I haven't played them, but that's a pretty that's a pretty big that's a pretty spicy meatball there. You gotta really mean that. Maybe I'll find a mod that has a better story than that. But as of like right now, as of the recording of this video, is definitely Sim Settlements 2. Let me know what your guys' favorite Fallout 4 mod is, because I just went from like a story angle, right? There could be, you know, if we get like super specific of it, there's like a whole bunch of different like technical mods. They're super good. There's like weapon mods. There's super good. Armor mods, stuff like that. But as far as like, you know, overall, I'd probably have to say Sim Settlements 2. That was a really good one. Let's see. we got a couple here that are what is it? We got a bunch here that are like group things, like the same person asked multiple questions. We'll start with these ones are from the Discord server. So let's start with this one from Kenshi in the Discord server. If you had to choose between being trapped in Vault 11 or Vault 87, which one would you rather be in? Well, now here's the embarrassing part, because now I have to embarrass myself by saying that I don't remember what Vault 11 and Vault 87 were. What were their experiments here? I got the pages pulled up here. All right, let's see. So Vault 11 was in the Mojave Wasteland. Dope. Oh, Vault 11 was the election one. Okay. That was a pretty nasty one. Vault 87, let's see. Capital Wasteland, north of Little Lamplight. Oh, that's the super mutant one. Shit. I'd probably have to say Vault 11, specifically because one, democracy based, but two, it would probably be better just to get, you know, murdered by fucking robot or whatever it was, instead of being fucking turned into a super mutant, or fucking even worse, a centaur. That would suck huge. So yeah, I'd probably have to definitely say Vault 11. Fucking let's go democracy. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good one. From Pax in the Discord server. Which Fallout game is your favorite one and why? So I get asked this question all the time. I've been asked it a lot. I continue to get asked this question. But so my favorite Fallout game would, at this point, I had to think there for a second. I would probably say that it's still Fallout 4, and it's weird when I say that my favorite is Fallout 4, or I see other people reacting to somebody else saying that Fallout 4 is their favorite game, because the weird thing that I always consistently see is people saying that the writing in Fallout 4 was like, you know, like really bad, which, you know, again, well, comparatively to like Fallout New Vegas, for example, it's not as good. Fallout 4's writing is not as good as it was in New Vegas, but I find it really weird because everybody is always going to like the story. Like everybody points like, oh, the writing in Fallout 4 was awful. And it's like, there's like the writing is only like probably like a third of the game, you know. Fallout 4 has got the exploration, it's got the weapon and armor customization, it's got settlement building, it's got so many positive aspects to it. And the only reason I'm saying Fallout 4 instead of Fallout 76, which from both a technical level as well as a gameplay level is just like way more expansive than Fallout 4, is specifically because, you know, you can mod Fallout 4. You can make Fallout 4 fucking incredible. But it's specifically like what you can do in, because it always boils down to like Fallout New Vegas versus X, whether it's Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout 76. There's never a debate between New Vegas and Fallout Shelter because we all agree Fallout Shelter's the vastly superior game. But as far as like you know, favorite game Fallout 4, why? It's just that there's so many unique things about it that well, I guess unique is the wrong phrasing, but it's just so it's from like after it dropped, it was basically like, because again, like the writing's the worst part of it, but it's specifically like the best game in terms of what it has to offer, what you can do in the game, and how you can do it. The only thing that's holding me back from saying that Fallout 76 is the best one is the modding. If you take modding out of the equation, like you can't mod any of the games, Fallout 76 hands down. The map is fucking amazing. The gameplay is really solid. The perk system, like the RPG elements are just like way better than Fallout 4. Wasn't the biggest fans of Fallout 4's the way they did perks and skills and such. I don't think it's as good in 76 as it was in like, you know, Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. But it's interesting. It's a step up from where it was in Fallout 4. But when you take modding into the equation, Fallout 4 is my favorite Fallout game. Not including like modding's off the table, Fallout 76. From a technical level, it's just better. So this next one is technically two different questions, but they're kind of the same question, just from different perspectives. So I'm going to read them as one question. This one's from Ranger in the Discord server. What's your favorite part about Fallout games, and what's your least favorite part about Fallout games? So I'll start with the second one. My least favorite part of Fallout games is it's like the fucking Discord around Fallout games, right? There's always some sort of like argument to be made about Fallout games. Like it's just like, oh, like this game's better than that game. This game sucks because of X. This game sucks because it was made by Bethesda. It's just like fucking just like shut up. You're not making the game any fun by being this level of toxic. And then they try to like get on like this like next level, like, well, you just have shit taste, or like we gotta hold Bethesda responsible for when they do like, you know, make bad games and stuff like that. Like ever since like fucking Fallout Prime came out and like Starfield and stuff, I've been seeing people like, oh, like Bethesda's been mid for like the past like 10 years or whatever, and it's like, what are you talking about? Bethesda has released some of its best games in the last decade. I mean, I guess that's not technically true. It'd probably be a little more like last like 14 years, because you have to include Skyrim there. But like, you know, even when you do that, like Elder Scrolls, like Skyrim, Fallout 4, you know, kind of a little bit Fallout 76, even though the fucking God, that launch. Starfield has been a massive game so far. It's sold fucking hotcakes, and it's like they've made some of the best Fallout games. Like they've made some of the best games of the modern era. I saw somebody on Twitter the other day who tried to compare them to Rockstar, and like, oh, Red Dead Redemption 2 was in development for like 7 or 8 years, and what was it? Starfield was in development for like 8 years or whatever, and just like compare Starfield to Red Dead Redemption. It's like, well, yeah, but you also have to take into account that one, there were a fucking swath of games that were canceled to make Red Dead Redemption 2 happen, and Rockstar has a development team that's like 10 times as big as, Bethesda does. And, maybe Starfield wasn't everybody's cup of tea, and I get that. But on a technical level, what the games actually are, when you compare Starfield and its development team to Red Dead Redemption 2 and its development team, they're like night and day. Because, well, actually, they're very comparable, but one was made with a fraction, a percentage of the amount of work or of the amount of employees or developers than the other. And yet they're still two phenomenal games for different reasons, of course. But like, that's my least favorite part. It's all the non-good faith, commentary, or like, this, that, and the other thing. It's never constructive. It's always destructive, and it's always negative comparisons. And there's no critical thinking, or maybe not critical thinking, but there's no critical commentary being applied. It's all just like, oh, this game sucks because, I like it, or because you like it, or because it's not the thing that I like. As far as my favorite part about Fallout games, it's just the atmosphere and the narrative, because like they could have done just like, oh, here's generic Wasteland, like, oh, I gotta survive. My kid died like 12 years ago, and I'm fucking addicted to cigarettes, and life is awful, and I gotta eat fucking garbage for dinner. They could have just gone like so negative, and so maybe not negative, but like they could have gone so like grungy with it, but they didn't. They created just like very compelling, if not the greatest stories like made in general. The story of Fallout 3 was amazing when it first came out. Maybe not amazing, but like it was really, really good when it first came out. It still, to this day, it's really good. And Fallout 4, same thing, a super fun game, not the greatest story. And it's like, the story quality can fluctuate from here or there, but if the game itself is good, it's going to be a good game. And for me, I like games that have good gameplay. And if the gameplay is good, it's a good game. So maybe that's not quite answering the question, but like my favorite part is just the level of immersion, in a sense. Like Bethesda's creation games have always been sort of like kind of like knockoff simulations, of like what this experience would be or that experience would be. And it's always been just like really cool to me, being able to like put myself in that situation. Like, man, if I was in this situation, what would I do? Who would I be? What would I want to do? What would I want to be? Stuff like that. And I think that's just like the really cool part about just any Bethesda creation project, because it's just putting you in this very meticulously made world with very lifelike, or pseudo lifelike realities or like situations, and just figuring out how you're going to navigate everything. And I think that's really cool. Let's see. Let's go with a more lighthearted one. This one's from Portawolf on the Discord server. If the bombs fell right now, would you want to die outright, deal with Vault-Tec's experiments, or fight for survival in the above world? Well, I guess it would kind of depend on what my chances are in the above world. If I was in a vault that had experiments in it, I would probably either want to just die right now or take my chances in the above world. But again, it would kind of depend on how what are the chances that I die a natural death above ground? If they're like, super low, like, you might as well just kill me right now. Because like everybody thinks that like, oh man, if the bombs happen right now, I'd be like the most badass dude in the wasteland. Like, nah, fucking like 100% of us would die. just like fucking straight up. He's got a more serious question here from Porta Wolf. Not that wasn't a serious question, but that was a more lighthearted question. This one's a little bit more detail orientated. What is your opinion on the canon of Fallout? Not the lore itself, but the idea of canonically continuing from game to game. Should any specific story of an open world RPG be considered canon, especially when the games don't directly lead into each other? So, to the first point, what is your opinion on the canon of Fallout? Not the lore itself, but the idea of a canonically continuing game, continuing from game to game. So, like, if Fallout 3 was, like all that was set in the Wasteland, and then, or in DC, and then Fallout 4 was set like in DC, kind of like with Fallout 1 and 2, how in Fallout 1, you're the lone wanderer, or the vault dweller. I always forget what he is in the first one, but in the second one, you are the chosen one, and you are a descendant of the character from the first game. And as far as like being like part of a long-standing lineage, like if in Fallout 4 you were playing as like the descendant of the lone wanderer from Fallout 3, that specifically, as far as like 3 or like 4 being a continuation of what happened in 3, I think for the kind of game that Fallout is and kind of has been this entire time, I don't think that would be the best idea. I think that it always kind of has, maybe not always, but it would make more sense for each game to sort of be exploring like a new character in a new region where, the larger world that is happening around the United States, the larger process of a developing wasteland, I think that should still be taking effect and should still be happening. But as far as you being like, like somebody from the last game, or related to somebody from the last game, I think that would kind of start to like draw too many like connecting strings, that don't really need to be there unless they serve some sort of like bigger story purpose. That's just me though. As far as should any specific story of an open world RPG be considered canon, especially when the games don't directly lead into each other? I think that's kind of I don't know. I don't know, because they're like one of the things that come to mind when you phrase it like that is the Might and Magic series, which had a lot of games, but I don't think any of them were directly connected story-wise. I don't think, but they were all set in like basically the same universe, but I don't think any characters carried over from game to game. Again, I could be way off on that. There's fucking a bunch of them. But I don't think that that's something that can be uniformly applied. I think it's kind of a case by case basis kind of thing. Because you could have an RPG, series with like, a bunch of different entries, and they could all be set in the same universe, but whether or not they're all specifically tied canonically, it could be, could not be. I think that's more so like a development kind of thing. What the writers intend, like what kind of story they want to tell with their games. Here's one from Mitz in the Discord server. Do you have any thoughts about toxic positivity that is present in many communities? So, toxic positivity, I'm not 100% familiar with the term. Let me check here. I just did a fucking Google search. It came up with something. Okay. No, shut up, Google. Nobody's talking to you. Toxic positivity, also known as excessive positivity or positive toxicity, is a dysfunctional emotional management without the full acknowledgement of negative emotions, particularly anger and sadness. Socially, It is the act of dismissing another person's negative emotion by suggesting a positive emotion instead. Okay, I think I got a better idea of what you're getting at there. So you're basically asking, let's see, dismissing another person's negative emotions by suggesting a positive emotion instead. Yeah. So I do think that that's definitely an issue. So like, there are a lot of people that criticize Fallout or Skyrim. It's just like any game in general. It doesn't have to be anything specific. But there are a lot of people that criticize games and media for a lot of times fucking stupid negative reasons that are either ill-informed, I think, or that are just like mad for the sake of being mad. So, for example, we can look at Fallout Prime, for example, the whole NCR thing, or the whole Shady Sands thing. There were a lot of people that were getting upset about that because, in my opinion, anyway, they weren't really fully comprehending what was being conveyed to them. They were either misunderstanding the information or just assuming that it meant something else. And in maybe not a lot of cases, but in a number of cases, that assumption was based on like the negative or the negative connotations that they already had associated with Bethesda. So I think in a lot of situations, when it comes to toxic positivity, as far as telling those people like, hey, you just got to like think positive about it, or like you shouldn't be, sad or mad at them because you did this. You got to be, happy about it because they did this. I do think that in some situations that is probably maybe warranted, but when it's like dismissing people's genuine concern or criticism about a game that's not rooted in just like, oh, the developer sucks or this game hasn't been good since, blah, 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 blah. I think that when it gets to that point where they're trying to like actively dismiss those concerns by pointing out the positive ones, I do think that that's an issue, because there's always going to be something that can be learned, or something that can be examined in a work of art that can be used to become, or that can be used in future projects to become better, to make something that is better, to learn and grow. Oscar Wilde said that experience is just the name we give to our mistakes. And so by recognizing the mistakes that we made, or understanding where we might have been able to do better, we are able to then be better. Like, a lot of people are pointing at Starfield as like, oh, Starfield's bad, Starfield's like not real good. And there are some people that are sort of taking that as like, well, they can mess up with Starfield. It's a new IP. It's not really like one of their big mainline things like Skyrim or Fallout. They can afford to, take risks, do, stupid stuff, experiment. And there's both a negative and a positive direction to meet in that same, basic point there. But to just outwardly dismiss somebody's criticism, valid criticism of something, because you just don't like that they're criticizing, this thing that, the topic at hand. I think that that's problematic, because it just sort of assumes it makes, or maybe not makes, but it leads to the feedback and the overall conversation about the game just being like absolutely positive. And then, moving forward, creators and developers and stuff, and you're like, oh, well, they absolutely loved the first one. It was a phenomenal experience for them. We don't really need to, change or like, improve in such a dynamic way. Obviously, they're creatives, so they're going to want to improve and change, but it just depends on like that level. It's important for a game. Like, if a game is overwhelmingly positive, like nobody has anything negative to say about it, I kind of start to question that a little bit, because if like a game is made and it's just like universally beloved, then one of two things is happening. Either one, there's a lot of people in the community that are just fucking outright lying. Or there is a fanatical, and maybe not fanatical, but there's a large enough base of people that have been blown away by what has been made to such an extent that there is a higher likelihood of them becoming fanatical later on down the line, when like Fallout New Vegas is a great example of this. Fantastic game, phenomenal game, absolutely dominated, asterisks, but it's one of if not the most beloved game in the Fallout franchise. But the downside of that is that so many people view anything that comes after it as either a step back or like just a complete divergence from what Fallout is as, you know, a story or as as content. And I think that then breeds hostility and conflict and condemnation about anything that comes after it. They develop the old world blues that, you know, the back then times is the best time, and anything that comes after is not, you know, going to get any better. So to the question, is negative, like the general question, like, is negative or is toxic positivity a bad thing? Or is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? I think it's definitely I think it's a good thing in the sense that it can be used to try to help people see your perspective. Like if you think something's really good, obviously you're going to try to, you know, explain to other people why you think it's good. But when it becomes a point of dismissing people's valid criticisms or valid opinions about a game, because of the fact that they're not positive, I think that's a problem. And that, as just like as fans and as communities in general, we need to be aware of like where the line is on both sides. Like where does the toxic positivity start and where's the toxic negativity start? And we need to avoid both of those sides because they're effectively doing the same thing, just with different emotions, and they're not good for communities in either respect. Here's one from NTM Fallout Productions. Have you watched any of the old Fallout Machinimas, including the Shoddycast Storyteller series? Yes, I absolutely have. One of the Shoddycast was actually one of the big inspirations for wanting to get into content creation. I think it's probably somewhere in my emails. But I still have an email correspondence that I sent to Shoddycast actually a long time ago, and I was asking them questions like, "Hey, I was kind of thinking of doing something kind of similar to what you guys do, but with with the fucking Bleach lore." And I wanted to ask, like, how do you sort of like work, like how do you make the stuff that you make as far as like not a legal standpoint, but like I can't remember, this was a fucking long time ago. I don't even think the storyteller stuff had even started at that point, but it was because he was the one that did the narration for Fallout. I was watching the Skyrim stuff way before the Fallout stuff happened, and when the Fallout stuff happened, that was amazing. But I can't remember what the question I asked was, but they actually responded, and gave me a little feedback. They said like, hey, just be aware, Japan has different laws, so it might not be copacetic in the same way that this stuff is. So just be aware of that. And then I proceeded to not do absolutely anything with it until fucking 2020, when I started doing YouTube content. But yes, I did watch the old Machinimas and stuff. They were a big inspiration, and one of the things that I originally wanted to start doing with my channel was Machinima content, which I kind of more so shifted away from, except for like background shots and establishing shots for like reviews and stuff. But yeah, Machinima has always been really cool to me. as a film student. But like it's hugely time consuming. But it when done right, it looks really good. It looks really good. Another question from Pax here. If you could smooch an NPC from the game Fallout, who would it be and why? Curie. Fallout 4, Curie. Giving her that big smooch. Robot Curie. No, I don't know. If we're talking about like anybody, I don't know. It'd probably be Curie. She seems she's more up my alley than most people in the Fallout world. Unless it's like, like a kiss on the cheek or something, in which case like it's anybody and everybody's getting this kiss. Dog meat, strong, Preston Garvey. Everybody getting kisses. Okay. Where's another good one? Another one from Kenshi. On a more serious note, I know that you mentioned not wanting to make lore videos on the Fallout universe, but would you like to make lore videos on fan projects like Fallout London? So I want to revisit this real quick. I have a couple times made lore videos. I have made a few talking about smaller bits of lore. Like there was a house in Boston just outside of, oh gosh, what was it? Just outside of Bunker Hill in Fallout 4. I don't remember if the house has a specific name, but it's referred to as like the radiation house. And you go into it, and there's like I don't remember the overall gist of what happened, but it seems to be insinuating that there was there was a little story. There was a lady in there post-war who was experimenting with radiation, and middle. She recorded a bunch of holotapes of herself taking on more and more rads, and then she became a glowing one. She's up in the basement. And I looked more in depth into that, and like the layout of the house doesn't really make so much sense. The occupancy of who's living here doesn't make the most sense. How did she get up there? Who left the holotapes? This, that, and the other thing. Just like questioning that stuff. So like it was lore, but it was like further lore. And then I had a brief shorts series called Today in Fallout History, which was like, it was specifically like a day related thing. So like on this day in Fallout, this this bit of lore happened. And that was really fun. I actually got to do a lot more Machinima stuff in that compared to almost anything else I did. And that specifically was interesting to me because it was like, everybody does like lore stuff, but there's a lot of stuff in the timeline specifically that doesn't really get talked about, that in and of itself isn't like a big thing, but it's like the little things that make the lore interesting, that make the universe more interesting. And the doing it in a short form content I thought was really interesting because they're just these tiny little things associated with much bigger stories in some cases. In other cases, they're just like, oh, this happened on this day. But because they're much smaller things, you get that little bit of lore and a little bit of story, and sometimes stuff that you might not have known about otherwise. And I thought that was interesting because it was being delivered that way in a short form content, and it wasn't something that could be applied to a long form content. I mean, it could, everything could. But I felt like it worked well in short form content because the information was brief enough to fit in there, and partially because short form content was was and is still pretty big. So to the question, would I make lore about Fallout fan projects such as Fallout London? Yes, as far as like fan projects, but I feel like that's slightly different from lore videos. It'd be more like, I mean, it could spin off into a lore thing. I guess to the larger question, yeah, probably. I could probably see myself um, doing something like that. Um, but I mean, like, yes, I would do something like that, but how I would go about doing it, I'm not 100% sure yet. Because with fan projects, in my mind anyway, it's always been more of like a review thing. Like, this is the story, this is that. But there is a lot of sort of like smaller behind the scenes lore stuff in like, New California or Fallout London or, Sim Settlements 2, kind of. Um, but I think it would be interesting to explore. I would just need to think of like how I could, present the information. But yeah, I think I would do that. That sounds cool. Here's another question from Ranger in the Discord server. What made you decide to start creating content online? Board games or video games? Definitely video games to because that sounds like another one of those like two question things. But like, what made me decide to it also reads like what made you want to start creating content, board games or video games. But I think it's probably two different questions there. The second one seems pretty easy, like board games or video games, like definitely video games, 100% video games. Board games in and of themselves are always pretty fun. I actually do a Bleach, or no, sorry, my mind's just stuck on Bleach now. I do a Fallout TTRPG game with a couple of friends. And that's been super fun. It's not quite technically like a board game, but it is closer to a board game than it is a video game. But like, what made me decide to start creating content online? So I mean, in the current meta, as it were, it was like 2020 happened. The COVID lockdown started happening. I was like just freshly out of work, and didn't have anything to do with my time, and I was getting the enhanced unemployment check. So I was probably making at that point more money not working than I was working. So I'm like, I gotta find something to do with my time. So I just got into, or rather back into content creation, because 2 times prior than that, I had tried to get into doing YouTube as a hobby. One time or the time before that, I was doing actual like I was doing let's play stuff. I did Kingdom Hearts. I did Kingdom Hearts 3. I don't think I finished that all the way. No, I didn't. I was doing Red Dead Redemption 2. I did oh gosh, what was it? Brutal Legend. And then there was a couple of other ones. I can't remember all of them, but I did that. That was super fun. It unfortunately got to a point where it wasn't really achievable after that. And then a long time before that, this was like back in like 2012, I did a creepypasta reading channel. It's fucking, funnily enough, actually, I just like a couple days ago, before the time of this streaming, or this recording rather, I received an email note, or an email notification that somebody on YouTube had commented on one of my really old creepypasta fucking reading videos. And so I was able to like go back to the channel and look at some of the older content I did. And it's like, wow. But yeah, that was a blast from the past, out of all of the literal nowhere too. But as far as like what made me want to start creating online content, if we're talking about like the modern stuff, if COVID happened and I had nothing to do. But if we're talking about like originally back with the creepypasta stuff, with creepypasta specifically, it was just like, oh, this is, it was creepypasta. That was like another time in and of itself. Like, oh, it's fun. You're reading the stories. You're, doing stuff on the internet. This is super fun. This is super cool. And like, hey, I could probably do that. I could probably I could probably read scary stories. And you know, it got a little bit of attention. Oh shit, what's his name? Creeps McPasta, who back then was like one of the like top creepypasta readers. He saw and commented on one of my videos, and that was super cool. And that helped encourage me a little bit. But just like with pretty much everything else, or with the second time I tried to do content creation, I fell into a point where like I just couldn't keep doing it anymore. So I had to unfortunately just kind of abandon that, which I really sucks. I feel bad about that. But you know, I'm doing stuff now. I'm in a much better position to actually do it, and you know, I'm fucking having the time of my life. And then the last question we got here is from an anonymous individual. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own YouTube channel, especially in a gaming niche? So it's not so much going to be in a gaming niche specifically, but anybody with a niche YouTube idea, a niche idea for content creation. One of the things that I have, because I've been asked this question multiple times. One of the things that I always advise to just anybody who's like, oh, I want to start a YouTube channel because I got like this really, interesting idea. There was one person in the chat one time when I was streaming who said like, hey, I have an idea for, what was it? It was like, it was, oh God, this was a while ago. I can't remember specifically. It was like something related to like, the history of like airships in the Fallout franchise, because like we see the Pridwin in Fallout 4, but that's not like the first time that airships have shown up in Fallout. I think it was in Fallout Tactics, either Tactics or Extreme. I can't remember. No, Fallout Extreme was a canceled game. What was the other one? I can't remember. I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Tactics. There was like an airship in Tactics as well. But it was like something related to like Fallout airships and then like real world airships. I can't remember off the top of my head, but one of the things that I always advise people when they ask like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel. What, do you have any, like insider baseball tips and stuff like that? One of the biggest bits of advice I always give to anybody in those positions is just like, do it. Just like if you have an idea, just, do it. Just like start making something right now. Cause the best time to start working on something is yesterday, but the best time to start doing it is now, because like, I believe that everybody has a creative side of them. Not very many people, know how to access that creative side. And there are a lot of other people that have that creative side, but don't know how to express it, how they want to go about utilizing that creative side. And I've always told people, like, if you have an idea, it's like that that quote from Stan Lee, like, if you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot tell you otherwise. Like, you have an idea, you go and do it. But then the second part of that is not every idea is going to be good, but that's part of the process. You start with an idea and then you grow from there. You expand. Like I said before, one of the things that I originally wanted to do with my content was, my modern content with the Follower Toshi, is I wanted to create machinima content, but I realized that was going to be just a big, long, time-consuming thing, and I wanted to do something back then anyway that was just fun. I wanted to just have fun with my content. I wanted to get in, and especially because I was and still am a longtime fan of Al Chessbreach. His stuff was literally just gameplay content, and back then and still, I watch people like Jacksepticeye, Cinnamon Toast Ken every once in a while. Game Grumps. I just watch like Let's Players, and like they have so much fun, or they seem to be having so much fun. As I said, it's not always sunshine and rainbows for content creators. But It's just that like generalist viewpoint of YouTubers, like, oh, they're just people who play video games and then rack up millions of dollars doing it. And it's like, yes, a lot of people are that, but the vast majority of people aren't that. They're just, regular people who upload stuff, and they're just doing gameplay and stuff. I see it a lot on my YouTube recommendation page nowadays, like people just playing video games, and they have like maybe like 300 views, 400 views, which is a fantastic start. But if you're trying to like break into it, it's definitely a lot harder. But it's one of two things. It's one of two things. You either have to like, well, it's two things actually. You have to get used with just, you have to get used to the fact of not being seen for a very, very long time. And I probably at this point probably would still just be a blip on somebody's radar way off in the stratosphere if I hadn't had TKS Mantis shout out one of my videos. But you have to start with the acceptance that you are not going to be seen for a long time, and you're going to have to really work at being seen. That's one of the problems that I've been struggling with, I guess fucking since drop, because I'm really bad at making myself seen. I'm really bad at putting my stuff out there and like advertising it. I stand by pretty much almost every video I make, but I'm just bad at just letting other people know how awesome it is. And so you have to get used to not being seen for a very long time. And then you have to continuously work on what you're trying to make. Because again, you could just be a gaming channel. You could just play video games. And like, that's your whole shtick. And if that's going to be your direction, improv comedy is like studying improv comedy is always going to just elevate your performance. But if it's something else, like, new stuff or like essay stuff, like I'm trying to do, you have to just like get really good at nailing down what kind of content you want to make and what kind of content is going to be sustainable to make. Because it's like with some of the projects that I've done them for a little bit. They didn't really pan out, and then I just kind of like set them aside, and like I can always pick this up later. But you can't get lost in the sauce. You have to really know what it is you want to do, and just like commit to that, commit to making that. And you need to continuously work on like, okay, this is the kind of content I want to make. Is it too niche? Is like only 3 other people on the planet going to get this? Or can I sort of like branch out into something bigger? Right. And that's really where you need to make the distinction. You need to figure out what you want to create. You either need to figure out what you want to create or just create for the sake of creating, because art is a subjective expression. It's never going to be the same for 2 people. It's always going to be different. It's always going to mean something different. And so if you want to create something, whether it be content for a YouTube channel, whether it's, gameplay, or whether it's, essays or stories, or just like talking about news, drama, whatever, you need to really dig deep into what it is you want to create, and then figure out the best way to create that, not only for your audience, but for yourself. Because as I've talked about a couple of times, you can really quickly burn yourself out by either doing a lot of different kinds of content really fast and not really feeling like you're really excelling in any of them, or by just doing the same kind of content and not really getting anywhere with it. You need to shape, you need to be able to shape what you want to do with what gets attention, in a sense. And if you do that, you need to either be okay with not getting seen as much as you would like to, or being quick enough to continuously shift what you're doing. Overall, though, I think that the most important thing I can suggest to anybody who wants to start a YouTube channel is just to create it, not hoping to get any sort of response from it, but to fulfill that creative part of you. Because like I said, I think everybody's got that creative part. They just need to figure out how to fulfill it. And if you can create something that is artistically fulfilling for you, it's going to be artistically fulfilling for something else or for someone else. And then it's going to be filling for, or, it's going to be fulfilling for somebody else and then somebody else and then somebody else. And before you know it, you've developed a following. If you can create something that has meaning to it, other people will see that meaning and they will come to your channel for more meaning. Thank you for sitting and chatting with me. And I hope you found this conversation enlightening, entertaining, and enriching. I hope to be able to do many more Q&A sessions in the future and continue to bring you all with me as we seek out thoughtful and joyful conversations with many other creators for years to come. As always, if you wish to support the Atomcast, like and follow, and consider subscribing to our Patreon, where your monthly contribution will go towards improving the quality of transmission and helping to decrease the time between uploads. Until next time, I thank you all so much for listening, for the love and support that you've shown me over the years, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland.